Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids and we're back for some more Gwent, the Witcher themed card game, and today what we are going to do is we are going to check out the new Switcheroo seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which we play under an alternate rule set, in which we will have our hand switched with our opponents after 2 turns. So, does that mean every 2 turns? Does that mean just after 2 turns one time and then that one switch is it? I don't really know. That sounds absolutely crazy. Let's check it out. I have not yet tried it myself. I was thinking about what I could theoretically do to try to make a deck for it specifically, but I honestly haven't a clue. So I'm really interested to see what other people are trying to do to make this work here. Because, of course, you can try to make the world's best deck, but at the same time, if your opponent is going to have access to it too, then good luck. So, going against monsters first here, and I say that, but at the same time, that probably means we are about to play as monsters a fair bit. So, one thing that comes to mind is we're probably going to want to use cards that don't require much setup, because, well, if we play something like, say, a Tridam Infantry or a Temerian Drummer, these guys do go really well together, yes, but at the same time, if we only get the chance to play one of them and not the other, then they're significantly worse. So, I mean, we do have some good cards here, yes. I just don't know to what extent are we expecting to be able to play them ourselves versus our opponent having the chance to play them. So I'm thinking I do like Doppler because it's an early card play, and it is something that, well, is strong when we have all the same base types of units because it's based on us using one type of unit here, so human, 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 human. That means that these guys will get boosted a lot. Okay, so I'm curious to see what you're starting out with. PV more warrior means if we were to damage it enough, we would outright destroy it. Moving its armor does the trick. So, not sure that changes much here. Obviously, you could make the case that the Doppler's not necessarily our best card here. Troy might be, Dandelion might be, so Anseis could be, certainly. So it's a tough decision. Again, I don't exactly know if we're going to be swapping our hands multiple times here, or if it's just once. But I'm going to lead off with the Dopplers, because like I said, they require little to no setup, as long as you play them at the beginning. Oh, what? That was just one turn. Oh, is it we go once, our opponent goes once, and then we switch? That is totally not what I thought. I thought we were going twice, and then it would switch, so... Okay. Is it basically every single turn, or do we now have this hand for the rest of the match? Well, I mean, we see that our opponent was at least theoretically going to be able to take out our card there, so at least we have that. Otherwise... They have Haunt, which is another good card. They're going for Anseis. Obviously, we know what they have. So, I think we play really short term here on the assumption that, well, we have no idea if we are going to get our old hand back or if we're going to stick with this hand here. So, I'm thinking the Beast makes sense because it gets boosted if it's not the strongest card on the playing field. And Anseis, theoretically, at least not immediately, but long term, well, actually, if you combine Tactical Advantage to make Anseis stronger, then Anseis duels, he could take out the Beast. So that is a bit of a counter there. I'm hoping that our opponent is not used to playing as Northern Realms, so maybe that won't be a thing that they'll realize they could do. The other thing is the Haunt is clearly the strongest card we have here, yes, but I'm not sure we're going to have the cards to make it work, because if we're about to switch hands again, and we are, then we aren't going to have any cards to trigger it when we're using Northern Realms. At the same time, we do want to make sure that we're the ones that play that card, not our opponents. So next time we get that hand, then I think we're definitely going to want to play it. And there is... Ooh, our opponent using Anseis, yes, but he really should have boosted him first, because then he could have outright deleted the Beast. And yes, they do play Haunt here, so that's unfortunate. Now we know what to expect. At least there's that. But what does this mean in terms of what we do now? I think maybe we Dandelion into a Doppler? Well, okay, so the interesting thing is Dandelion allows you to draw another card and then play an extra card. So it's basically card advantage. But the thing is, are we getting the card advantage, or is our opponent going to get the card advantage? I don't know. Like, if we have more cards at one point in time, and then we swap hands, you know, what happens when one person is out of cards and the other person is not? I really don't know. So I think let's go with Dandelion here. And maybe we play Donimir of Troy as well. Okay, so we got a Drummer, which is, of course, a good card, yes. I'm going to pass on the Doppler for now. Deliberately going to boost the Doppler that we have played and block the Beast so that the Beast has more time protected in which to have this boost by 2 start to play out. Because basically what we're trying to do here is punish our opponent for not outright removing the Beast earlier. They're going to use Temerian Drummer, so that is of course a card that we just drew. And what we could do is we could block the Temerian Drummer, which is not a bad idea per se. Otherwise, this is another card that's good to play early, or we could even move the Temerian Drummer. We have a lot of damage here. We could delete something, which I'm thinking More Worker is probably the best for that. Not so much any of these guys here, because they're relatively weak. So I'm thinking, let's go with you first. Then next turn, I'm thinking we use the Shackles on the Drummer. We hope that they're still there, of course. Our opponent doesn't really have anything to lock at the moment, because it doesn't affect Donimir of Troy's Defender ability. And you are Veiled, so it's not going to affect you at all. So I'm hoping that we'll still see it. Yep, we didn't really have any intention of playing the Harpy Egg, so that seems fine to me. Does, however, mean that they're closer to triggering Haunt. I mean, that's, in fact, one reason to make a point of playing units with Death Wish when we have the Monster Hand is just to prevent our opponent from triggering everything from Haunt, which I didn't really think of initially, but I suppose is a thing. Now, the thing here is, we don't have too many strong cards remaining on the Northern Realm side, unless we are able to pull off Temerian Drummer plus Tridam Infantry. That is a combination you'd like to have as early as possible. Our opponent has Temerian Drummer already, so let's make a point of playing Tridam Infantry ourselves. We'll boost him. Arguably should put him in the range row where he's blocked by Donimir of Troy. We're going to keep this unused. Basically trying to prevent our opponent from doing that combo there. And we may or may not have the Temerian Drummer on our next turn. If we do, okay, congratulations, you have earned yourself a mute. Then, if it is still there, then we'll play it. If not, then not entirely sure what we'll go for next time we have the Northern Realm side. And yes, so that Northern Realm side is certainly looking a little weak at the moment. And so one could argue that it's about time to pass when one has the Northern Realm side. It's just that, what does that mean for the other person? Do you still swap hands even after someone has passed? We are, at least theoretically, in the lead right now. We do have a fair bit of boosting still, because you'll get boosted every turn. You're still going to continue to get boosted by 2 every turn, because the Doppler is still higher than you. Ah, they did play the other Temerian Drummer. That is unfortunate. Was hoping we'd get the chance to do that. So, we can lock one of them. We can move one of them. We can outright destroy one of them. Definitely some options. I mean, this one down here is getting close to being able to get taken out by Geralt of Rivia, even. But I'm thinking, let's stick with... See, this is 3 damage and prevents you from boosting by 1, so that's in theory total of at least short term 4 of boostage. This gives us 2 and prevents you from boosting by at least 1 in the short term, so at least short term this is worth 3. So if we're passing next turn, then we probably do want to go Meridian Shackles. I'm thinking probably use it on this one here, because I kind of do want you to continue to boost Anseis, because that is the person who's most likely for us to be able to use Geralt of Rivia to destroy. Of course, they could use Geralt of Rivia on the Doppler. They have not done so yet, but they've had plenty of time in which to do it. This Doppler is getting weaker and weaker the longer we go without playing it, because, again, it's based on the number of the same type of units that you have in your hand, and so you want to play it early. That's why we played this one first. The longer it goes unplayed, the worse it is. At this point, probably would be looking to play either the Scythman or the Elite. These are relatively short-term cards. This boosts itself by 6, so that's 7 strength total. It's a pretty decent one-card play, and then you get boosted based on the number of boosted units we have, which right now is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'd actually be also a 7. Those are decent at this point in time. Again, we do theoretically have a lead, but we know that our opponent can reverse that quickly if they were to play Geralt, and this is probably it. Yep. I think what we do here is we'll look at the scores, but we might pass. Let's see. So we are down 12. So either of these guys would give us 7, bringing us to 40, and then you would no longer get boosted, notably, because you are no longer the second strongest card on the playing field. Our opponent just removed what was the strongest, so not going to get that boost anymore. You would get boosted by 1, so that'd bring us from 40 to 41. We could boost Temerian Drummer. That'd bring us to 42. We deal 1 damage to them in the process. Bring them to 44. We would still be losing. But I think we pass here. And it means that we will have card advantage here. Our opponent has played 1 more card than we have. Unless we swap decks even after that, in which case we deliberately want to pass when we have fewer cards than our opponent. Okay, that's a weird one. So that answers some of our previous questions, unless when they pass we'll also swap. No, I don't think so. That is going to be extremely difficult to remember when exactly one is supposed to pass, because I think what would happen now is, well, if our opponent plays a card, would we then re-swap and suddenly we'd have... Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen right now. They are playing a card. They are playing Doppler, meaning that each person will have 3 cards in their hand. Are we about to swap again? We are. So, if we had finished with the monsters, does that mean we would have had the monsters in our hand and then drawn 3 Northern Realms units from our deck and had a weird combination of the two? I honestly don't know. This is a weird one. This is a really, really weird one, but it's fun. So, let's see. I think, in terms of boosting itself, not needing a lot of setup, Kerack City Guard is great. So I like that. Nathaniel Pastodi is probably the strongest card here, but does require some setup, getting boosted. So we have a better means to do that than our opponent does, because we have our leader ability that does boost. We also have Runeword, which normally I don't love, but is theoretically a way to do that as well. Let's get rid of it, though, see if we can get a little bit better. Alright, Geralt of Rivia. I mean, we know how that went last time around. Let's try swapping you out, and that's another pretty terrible card. We're getting sort of the bottom of the barrel here in terms of Temple Guard, Kaedweni Sergent, to a lesser extent, Redania Elite. Okay, that's pretty strong, because Thrive means it will get boosted whenever our opponent plays a card that is higher than 1 strength, and it doesn't matter if that's a monster or a Northern Realms unit, it's going to happen either way. But I think we lead off with you, because you will boost yourself every turn, regardless of whether we have monsters or Northern Realms cards in our hand. So you can also see what else is remaining here. Some familiar faces, yes, we could consume and or consume again if we have dominance. Well, dominance is useful for monsters at times, yes, but not as much so for Northern Realms, so not sure the appeal of this is all that appealing anymore. He did play Pastodi. Like I said, definitely was the best card we had here. Just don't necessarily think that our opponent had much in the way of making it work. We could outright delete him here. Just maybe not a bad idea. I'm not a huge fan of many of these cards here because there's not a lot we can do with them, short of just playing high base strength units. So, if you were to go that route, you are the strongest, although if you are to take 4 damage, then you get deleted. So, ideal that we would play this a little bit later on so that our opponent has less time to deal the damage to it. So, I think, in that case, we might want to delete Pastodi. Let's do it. You'll continue to get boosted here. We won't use your ability, which would move an opponent from one row to another, which at times has some value. But we probably just want to have you getting boosted as much as possible, because you only get boosted if you don't use that ability. They do play the Kikimor Warrior. Like I said, I was eyeing that a bit, just wanted to hold out a little bit longer. Unfortunately, we will not have the opportunity to play it. It does not seem. So, similar story, actually. Ooh, with the Redanian Elite, I was going to say, because that also has 7 strength, but then gets reduced down to 1 if our opponent is to deal 4 damage to it. This one gets outright destroyed, this one gets reduced to 1, so very similar in that way. And, Geralt of Rivia is close to being able to take it out, but it does need 2 more strength before we can do that. So I think we need to pass there on playing him for the moment. I think we go with Kaedweni Sergent. I'm not super thrilled about, because I don't think that... Well, tell you what. I think we go with Redanian Elite, actually. Short term, it's stronger. Kaedweni Sergent does boost other cards. I mostly want to make sure that we have 3 cards in a row here. If we do end up playing Temple Guard ourselves. Does that boost 3 cards in a line? But I don't know what our opponents can play here. We don't quite have a 9 strength unit, but of course, Kerack City Guard is getting boosted by 1 every turn and is 1 turn away from reaching 9 strength, meaning that Geralt of Rivia is about to become quite relevant. We might want to play it, even if we don't have anything to use it on, just because we know that our opponent is going to want to use it. So, basically a counterplay of sorts. Then, what do we go for here? We could play this and then consume Kerack City Guard, but of course that's only going to get us 1 even stronger unit, and then it's absolutely going to have a target on its back for Geralt of Rivia. So I don't think that's the answer. I think it might be the Night Wraith, because I'm not sure we have much use in the Drowner. We could move the Kikimor Warrior to the range row. It does have a little bit of an ability here in the melee row where it gains additional armor if our opponent is to play more insects. I don't think that's going to be a huge factor, though, because we're not going to be able to deal the damage for it anyway. Remove that armor. So I think we just go with the Night Wraith. Or even, I mean, the Barghest, actually, come to think of it, well, they both have 5 strength. I was going to say, the Barghest, even if we don't use the consume ability, it has 5 base strength, versus the Night Wraith's 3 base strength, but the Night Wraith also plays some rats here. So, collectively, they're both 5 base strength. So here, I think we are going to play Geralt of Rivia, even if we don't have anything that we necessarily would be able to destroy. It's just to prevent our opponent from destroying Kerack City Guard. Opponent does use the Barghest. Now, that will have the option of consuming, and that was clever. Getting up to 8 strength is not quite enough for us to get rid of it with Geralt of Rivia, which, of course, our opponent knows that we have. But I think we play it nonetheless. And we do this. It's not going to do anything special. But then we boost and take your pick. I don't know, maybe we boost a rat? Does mean that now Kerack City Guard is safe and will get boosted by 1 more at the end of this turn, so we will have a slight lead here when we swap hands. We have the Drowner, which is not as good a card as the card that they have, the Temple Guard. So it's coming down to just that. They may have the victory here. Except we do still have Kerack City Guard. Oh, why did you do that? That was a misplay. Oh, except you won round 1. So if you were to play your leader ability here and use Woodland Spirit, yes, you absolutely have this one. So, sure, we can do this, yes, and in theory, the Drowner did have Thrive, which meant that if we were to play it early, and if we were to play future cards that have higher strength, then it would have gotten boosted. So, this is another card that you, if you are going to play, want to play early, but I think it was one of the weaker cards in this hand, so none of us wanted to do it. So let's move the Kikimor Warrior. Like I said, in theory, that's one that is, well, at least slightly weaker in the range row. Not that that's going to be terribly relevant now. We will get boosted 1 by Kerack City Guard if we don't play its ability, which we won't do, but of course we will still fall short here. So there's a first look as to what this switcheroo thing is all about, and it is very, very confusing, but also fun. So let's give this another shot here. I think one of the big things that we learned was that, first and foremost, yes, you are absolutely switching cards every single time that both people play their cards. So I originally thought it was going to be We play our card once, our opponent plays their card once, we play a second card, our opponent plays a second card, then we switch, and I wasn't sure if that was going to continue to happen every single time, or if that was just going to be a one-time thing and that was it. So the other thing is, well, our deck, sure, is a thing, but our opponent's deck is just as relevant, because at this point in time, we're going to be playing half Northern Realms, half Skellige, so what do we want to do here? Dandelion, yeah, like I was saying before, I think given how even after someone passes, you will still swap with your opponent, that makes me believe that Dandelion is actually an extremely, or wouldn't say extremely bad card, but its primary purpose, its primary strength, is no longer strength. Geralt of Rivia is going to be an interesting game of hot potato to get him, but we'll keep him for now. Let's get rid of you and get Anseis. That's another card that our opponent's probably going to want to steal from us. They go first. Let's see what they play here. Ooh, Gascon is a good early play because he gets boosted potentially a lot. Oh, random boosts between 0 and 11. They only got 2. So unfortunate on their part there. I think, or we could have, if he did get the big boost, just use Geralt of Rivia and immediately destroyed him. I think we probably do what we did last time and do a high boost Doppler. I would like to make sure that we get Prince Anseis, Anna Strenger, Geralt of Rivia, Egmund, basically all of our strong cards. Yes, and Temerian Drummer plus Tridam Infantry. We have good combinations here. It's just that what is our opponent going to choose to play? Right, we could argue that maybe our opponent is very unlikely to play the Doppler. And so, even if it is one of our best first turn plays, maybe it's best to hold on to it because it should be relatively safe from being played when it's in our opponent's hand. I think they are not going to want it. Well, bear in mind, it's going to say the Doppler is, of course, strongest when it's using the Northern Realm stuff there that is all humans, or one Witcher and everything else humans. They may not realize that, though. I think that Doppler is not a terribly popular card for people to use, so may not realize that. Yeah, they're taking Egmund instead. This is another card that, of course, like we were saying, we would have liked to have had. Lyrium is catching my attention here. It's splitting 6 damage randomly on a row, and we would love for it to take out Egmund. That is by no means a guarantee. We could, well, we can't lock Egmund because he's veiled. What else could we do here? This is an interesting hand with not a lot of units in it, so that's a little odd. Notably, this card is completely worthless to us because, well, I would say we'd have no chance of getting bronze Skellige units in our graveyard. But then again, if we're playing Skellige units, because we'll have Skellige units every other turn, then maybe it could be useful then? I think what we want to do here, though, is probably just take what, at least to me, at the moment, appears to be far and away the strongest card in this hand. At least for our purposes. Definitely happy to get the Northern Realms hand back, because I think Tridam would be very good with Strenger, of course. What you can do is play Tridam here, and then the Temerian Drummer to the left of Tridam, and then Temerian Drummer is boosting Tridam, and Strenger is also boosting Tridam, except now you're going to lock Strenger. That does change things a bit here. It means that we don't immediately have a setup for Tridam Infantry. We could consider doing the Doppler, doing Anseis even. Egmund is getting awfully high strength right now. Might mean that we want to do something to get rid of him. At the same time, Anseis would need a bit of setup himself. That's pretty much the only way to do it. Either Anseis, or if Egmund does get up to 9, then Geralt of Rivia. I think our opponent's going to be very knowledgeable how Geralt of Rivia is on the table. And so, not entirely sure what the best play here is. I think maybe we do still go with Tridam. And next turn, we really hope that we still have Temerian Drummer available to us. If not, then that is definitely a misplay. So, it's a pretty high-risk move. And for that reason, maybe in hindsight, might not have been the best option here. We'll see if our opponent does go with the Temerian Drummer. Like we were saying before, what would, oh, they go Anseis here. Yeah, they could almost delete Temerian Drummer immediately. Not just yet. They played him in the range row, which means he'll get boosted by 1. Does not have Zeal, so we'll take a turn. We probably want to make a point of boosting Tridam in some way, shape, or form here. Otherwise, Tridam is likely to go down. What is the best way to do that? I'm thinking is probably using this card here. Oh, actually, we could Purify Anna Strenger and boost her. Yes, absolutely. That would unlock her, notably, which will allow us to boost Tridam as well and deal damage to Anseis. So Anseis no longer can take anyone out in one turn here, and we now have our setup back, and we can put Temerian Drummer right there, double boost Tridam Infantry. Now this is looking much better. So I'm curious to see what our opponent does here, because they were definitely planning on going Anseis. I suppose Anseis plus Egmund. Egmund can do 3 damage himself. That is likely what they're going to do here. Or at least, I would argue, what they should do. As for whether or not they will, remains to be seen. Getting Anna Strenger so she's no longer boosted. Oh, or you could deal the damage that way. Yeah. You do have your fair share of damage. We did see that. I think we still go with Temerian Drummer here. And then we could boost Temerian Drummer to make him a little tankier. But I think more optimized play, a little bit higher risk, but optimized, so to speak, is to use Tridam as the booster there. Now, of course, he's 1 boost away from being Geralt of Rivia prey, so we probably want to make a point of playing Geralt of Rivia next turn, even if we can't use him to delete anyone. Okay, you brought in Knickers, which is a little concerning, because that wasn't necessarily something that I realized was on the table, but it's a Skellige deck that we're playing against, so I suppose should have realized that. So, we can give armor to a unit in our hand. That seems pretty much useless when we're going to be passing our hand to our opponent after this. Remove an opponent's armor. Yeah, lots of armor-based stuff. The Skellige stuff, or playing a Skellige unit from our graveyard, at least at the moment, is useless. We do have 1 Northern Realms unit, but at some point, we might have Skellige units in our graveyard. Otherwise, there's not a lot of good stuff happening here. I think we actually might want to play the Crows? Play them in this row in case Tridam Infantry does go down, then there will at least be Crows getting boosted. And they still have a lot of damage on the playing field here. Between Egmund, he can deal 3. Obviously, you can as well. And we kind of saw this part coming. So normally, this would be the part where I would say we would want to pass, because we have 1 more card remaining than our opponent, so they've, quote-unquote, over-invested in this round. But, well, as we saw previously, we are just going to end up passing our hand over to our opponent, and then they will probably have card advantage. So that play style, I still have to work out how best to work that into our strategy, because yeah, it seems like, what is the downside to just throwing away all of our cards here and making sure that we get our opponent's hand afterward? Because that seems like that's just always the right move. So we're talking here about playing Geralt of Rivia just so that our opponent cannot. It's definitely not the best card for us, but it is definitely the best card for our opponent. So I think we do that, because we kind of have to. Like I said, normally I would pass here and take the card advantage into round 2 and try to ride that momentum. Our opponent does immediately pass. Yeah. So I think what we do... How much of a deficit are we looking at here? A lot. 14. So what we want to try to do is, I think we found that if we continue to play cards, we will continue to swap hands with our opponent. So I think we do that, and we basically just wait until our opponent has fewer cards and pass then. So let's do this. Give armor to you. Sure. Then we'll swap. And so, hold on. Then We go with Redania Elite. I think is still probably the strongest unit here. I think Doppler will go unplayed. Let's go Redania Elite. We'll just, you know, play everyone's cards, basically. Don't mind if we do. So we'll see what it's like when you go this route. Play little Northern Realms, play little Skellige. I mean, these are all, or at least this is a neutral card. So now we're close, but not quite there yet. This has 5 strength, so that should do the trick. And then afterward, we'll pass over the hand that has fewer cards to our opponent. But, hold on. We do this. Oh, we removed the armor. Sure, doesn't really matter here, but... Oh, what? We're still... Oh, I miscalculated. Hold on. We still need to play one more card still. It's gonna say... Well, we could pass here, yes, but then does that mean that in doing so we're giving our opponent the hand with more cards in it? Because will we swap one more time? I think we still do? So I think... I mean, we definitely do still need to play one more card if we're trying to take this round here, so let's do that. Boost Tridam Infantry, deal the damages. We'll boost him that way as well. Definitely in the lead now. Now the question is just... What do we do here to try to make sure that we have a card advantage going into the next round and our opponent does not? I think we might actually play this. Then we give our opponent the hand with 0 cards in it, and we keep the hand with 1 card in it. So this could backfire. At the very least, we did take round 1, for sure. As for whether or not we will have a card advantage, I think we will. So there you see what sort of happened to us in the previous game, where we attempted to pass a little bit early and have a card advantage. Doesn't really work in this game mode. No, if you do that, then your opponent can do exactly what we just did and make a point of just holding on to as many cards as they need until you know for a fact that you're going to have more cards than your opponent. The Dandelion, like I was saying before, not the best play in this case unless we really want to make sure that we're playing 2 cards in 1 turn. That part does still work. But the whole having more cards than your opponent thing, well, as we just saw, that can certainly backfire. I think we get rid of Doppler. That much is clear. Temerian Drummer plus Pastodi is good. But as to whether we'll actually be able to use that combination, ideally you'd have Donimir of Troy blocking people so that they can't disrupt that. So it works. It's just that it is very much based on us being able to play all these cards, which is not necessarily the most realistic of assumptions. But I think what we do is we go Dandelion Poet, and then we'll play Temerian Drummer, and that will allow us to boost Dandelion with the Temerian Drummer, for sure. And then if we get Donimir of Troy next time we get the Northern Realms hand, or Nathaniel Pastodi, we'd like to have Nathaniel Pastodi, because he does extra stuff when he's boosted. But we'll see what we get here as well. That's another card that boosts itself, so that's another one that's useful. We'll boost Temerian Drummer, I think. And we will see what we get when we swap after our opponent goes. Of course, we're going first this time, so that's interesting. Yeah, I actually think that when it comes to going second, I think that is a humongous advantage, because as we saw previously, if you ever pass first, then your opponent can do what they will. And what with these hands having unequal amounts of cards in them, that is also interesting, because that does mean that, well, someone might be forced into passing here, and with a little bit of math, I'm sure we could figure out who that will be. But do we do this, which is, yes, the strongest option, but we can't do it on Temerian Drummer, or do we do this, and we could use it on Temerian Drummer? I think we have to do this. It reduces their strength by 3 and then boosts. Temerian Drummer would not have survived that damage. Ooh, I think our opponent is about to get the hand with only 1 card in it, right? And then will they be forced to pass? Oh, and look at this. I get why you wanted Donimir of Troy, but allowing us to have Temerian Drummer plus Nathaniel Pastodi, that is questionable. Let's see. 2 random units will get damaged by 1. I want to make sure that Temerian Drummer stays alive, so even though we'd like to boost Nathaniel Pastodi because he dishes out the bleed when he gets boosted, I want to make sure that Temerian Drummer survives as long as possible. We'll play the patient game here. See, what I'm getting at is, you'll do this. Oh, now we're both forced to pass? Oh, and they won by 1? Ah, so if we were to have boosted Nathaniel Pastodi, then it would have been the difference maker. Should have been thinking more short term, but I was not sure what was going to happen there with regard to who was going to be forced to pass. I thought it was going to be our opponent, and then we would still have the chance to play one more card. So it is, again, really difficult to predict what's going to happen there. Eventually, I'm sure we'll get the hang of when those things work, but yeah, tough to tell at this point in time. Now, another strong duo here with Tridam Infantry and Corvo. This is one of the best cards in our deck, but it does rely on being able to play both these cards, which is easier said than done. Geralt of Yrden is good, but I think, whoa, this is an interesting one. Plays the highest unit from our deck, which for us would be Vandergrift, which is shield and resilience, which is not terribly useful in the last round, because resilience won't do anything. Oh. Okay, you have a scenario to play. You may not have enough cards to make that happen. Also, we could proceed to play all the cards that would normally trigger that. So, yeah, I don't necessarily think this is terribly strong for us. Of course, our opponent will also have the opportunity to use this card. So I think what we do, we play Corvo first. We'll boost him. His thing is that every time someone plays a card, he can boost someone. So you play him early, and the longer the round, the better, for sure. Okay, I'm not sure we played any Skellige cards at all. Even when we had our opponent's hand. So I don't think this does anything for us. Okay. They are playing their strongest unit. Figured they'd probably want to do that. Boost all allied bandits by 1 when you deploy. Well, you didn't have any bandits, so we could lock you, which is very tempting, because you do have an ability that's going to allow you to get boosted. So I think that is probably preferable here. Do you have any Skellige units in your graveyard? You have at least this token. It is doomed. How did you get a doomed card in your discard pile? I don't really know. But I don't think that you have much to use this with either. So this is more or less just a useless card for both of us. I think we definitely want to play this then. And Corvo doesn't really have anyone that we want to boost right now. We're ideally going to want to play this card here, Tridam Infantry, and boost it a ton, which we'll definitely be able to do. And that, we're hoping, is going to be enough. Now, that card will only apply 1 round of bleeding. It would normally apply to 2 different units, but we only have 1 unit out there. So we definitely go with Tridam Infantry here. And we are just boosting the living daylights out of you. And hoping that this will be enough. So getting rid of 1 unit is certainly good. And won't have enough to get rid of the others. But that is still a pretty strong lead here, and that is the one card that we said was going to be pretty useless there. And again, it's kind of the forced pass situation, which is, again, quite confusing, but there you have it. We've won. So there's what can happen when things go right. But as we were saying before, when it comes to when people have an uneven number of cards, that is when things get very interesting. And that what we did in the first round, where we just deliberately played card after card when we knew that our opponent had already passed and just took the cards from both our hand and our opponent's hand, it works. So if you find that your opponent does that to you, then I suppose you can perhaps just, I don't want to say automatically win a round, but you can take advantage of that situation, and on the other hand, do not pass early. Otherwise, your opponent can do that to you. But with that, that gives you guys a chance to see what this Switcheroo seasonal event is all about, and I'm curious to see what you guys think of it. What do you think are going to be the strongest cards, skills, factions? And of course, your opponent's going to be able to use your cards as well, so how do you plan around that? Do you take the simple, straightforward cards that don't require extra setup? Or are you willing to take the risk, go for the cards that in the long term might be more powerful, but will require that you do some other things to set them up, and will you have those cards to make it happen, or will your opponent play them instead? So hope you had fun, and I'll catch you next time.